Anybody have any questions from yesterday? Here's where we're jumping in. Go ahead. Do I have updates on the students you met yesterday? No. I have updates on some of the kids today. Depended on what my role was, a lot of these were one-shot deals. And then they took it. Which one, Anthony or Andrea? Yeah, yeah. Me too. Although I was on a Zoom call this morning with a father whose daughter was one of my biggest saves of my career. And she's now at Stanford. At the moment, she's in Beijing. And we were talking about her doing a summer internship at Lives in the Balance next summer. And this kid was quite something. But you know what? The model works. This is the thing. This does work. This is a kid who also suffered kidney damage because of all the meds they had her on that were doing her no good. So she wanted to sue the prescribers. They decided not to, but whatever. She's doing amazing. 6. And was just tearing it up at school. And home was no better. In my first meeting, in the first meeting, she's sitting between her two parents on the couch in my office. And I tried to switch from talking about Barbies, which is not my best thing, to an unsolved problem. And she hit her father so hard when I tried to make that switch. And I just thought, okay, well, the model works. And it did. Here's where we're jumping in. I want to remind you of the guidelines for writing unsolved problems because we're about to practice. Good? And what I want to remind you about is that the prompts that are in the unsolved problem section on the ASIP are what get the unsolved problem going, but it is these guidelines that finish the job. So, for example, the first prompt is, does the kid have any difficulty getting started on or completing any academic tasks? I don't remember the exact wording, but that's what it says. That gets you started. This helps you write the unsolved problem well. Okay? So you're starting with the prompt, then it's these guidelines that help you write it. Guideline number 1, no concerning behavior. Guideline number 2, no theories. Guideline number 3, I promised to remind you today that I'm going to remind you of this. Split, not clumped. Careful on that one. Guideline number 4, as specific as possible. And it is those 2 strategies under guideline number 4 that you want to pay particular attention to. They're going to help you fill in your unsolved problem, especially the details. You know that the unsolved problem starts with the word difficulty, continues with a verb, but being specific about what expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting usually comes down to those 2 strategies, as in the examples I gave you yesterday. But you're about to see more examples. We're not going to practice quite yet. I've got one more slide and then 10 minutes of a video to show you to get you fully prepped for practicing. Good? This slide we did not cover yesterday. Verb selection is the hardest part of writing the unsolved problem. You know, it starts with difficulty, then comes the verb. Then come the specifics of the unsolved problem, and those 2 strategies that were just on the screen are going to help you think of the specifics. Verb selection is the hardest part. At the bottom of the ASIP guide, which you have in your handouts, there are 20 or so sample unsolved problems, each containing a different verb. So if you're having trouble thinking of a verb, my bet is that you'll find the one you're looking for in the sample unsolved problems at the bottom of the ASIP guide. Good? If you don't have the ASIP guide in front of you, I can tell you the 6 you're going to be using the most. Did I say this yesterday? This is 80% of your day in a school. Completing, getting started on, getting along with, participating in, going to, coming back from. Those 6 verbs are 80% of what you're asking kids to do in school during a day. I'll repeat them. Completing, getting started on, getting along with, participating in, going to, coming back from. So I think we just covered most of the unsolved problems you're going to try to write. Good. But you got more verbs on the ASIP guide with those sample unsolved problems. Okay, here's bullet number 2. This is big. Early unsolved problems are better than later unsolved problems. Here's what I mean. I was working with some teachers in the Boston Public Schools, and one of them proposed the following unsolved problem for one of his middle school students: difficulty remaining in the classroom for ELA. Sounds good, right? I said, that's fine, we could write that one down, but it sounds kind of late to me. What's going on before she's having trouble remaining in the classroom for ELA? He said, she's having trouble staying awake during ELA, and I'm trying to wake her up. I said, we could write that one down too. I still feel like we're probably a little late. What's going on before that? He said, she's having difficulty following along as I'm reading All American Boy to the class. I said, that's early. That's the one we'd probably start working on first. Does this make sense? Difficulty following along comes before difficulty going to sleep, comes before leaving the room. These 2 are later than this one. You'd rather go early because that's the beginning of the whole thing, the whole sequence. I hope that makes sense. It is okay to write desired behavior in as part of your unsolved problem. Example, difficulty raising hand during social studies discussions. Is raising hand a behavior? Yes. Is it a concerning behavior? No. Is it the desired behavior? Yes, that's fine. What wouldn't be fine is calling out answers during social studies discussions. Calling out answers is the concerning behavior. That's out. So it's the concerning behavior that's out. Not horrible if the desired behavior is in. That's actually going to happen sometimes. Good? You with me still? Were the lights on in here yesterday? Something's different. Maybe it's just because the sun's out. You want to make sure that the wording of your unsolved problems is kid-friendly. So if you word an unsolved problem, take a look at it and ask yourself, if I sandwich this between I've noticed that and what's up, is the kid going to understand what I'm asking? If the answer is no, reword it. And finally, if the kid can meet the expectations sometimes and not others, is it still an unsolved problem? Yes. It's an unsolved problem if the kid's having difficulty meeting it reliably. That's your key word, reliably. If the kid is not meeting it reliably, it's an unsolved problem. I want to show you 10 minutes of an ASIP meeting. This is on the website, so some of you might have seen it. This is a school, an elementary school. We're doing a ASIP so that I could put it on the website on a little first grader who was little kindergartner or whatever he was, 6-year-old. This is the school principal. You've got 2 of the kids' teachers in here. This was filmed during Zoom. What this does a great job of, and I'm only going to show you 10 minutes, then we're going to practice, is showing you the process that we go through to identify unsolved problems. It's also really good at showing you, me helping them go from late to early. So here we go. This is the principle. Here we go. No, we are not. Let's see if what the sound thinks it's doing. The sound is off. Here's the demo. Please work.
Are there specific tasks or expectations that John is having difficulty completing or getting started on? And here we go.
Well, I would say that John is having difficulty joining the class at morning meeting time in the circle area.
Joining the class in the circle at morning meeting. Great unsolved problem. I can't think of any way to make it more specific. It's great. Any other tasks or expectations John is having difficulty completing or getting started on?
Well, I don't know if this is considered a task, but difficulty regulating his voice volume. Is that?
Well, here's what I'm going to ask you, because at the moment, that's what we call clumped. I'm going to try splitting it, right?
Okay.
Regulating would not be a verb that I would throw at a kindergartner.
Okay.
And so I'm going to ask you, first of all, I'm going to ask you when. When is John having difficulty? I'm not writing anything down yet. When is John having difficulty regulating his voice volume? If you say all the time, I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I know I can't say all the time.
No,
when frustrated, but sometimes it's even when he's not frustrated.
Okay, so we're going to take frustrated or not frustrated out.
Okay.
And let's think more specifically, either about what he's getting frustrated about, or when he's having difficulty speaking softly, which is what I would, well, let me ask you, what is your expectation? When you say regulating voice volume, tell me how you would put that for a kindergartner.
An inside voice, using an inside voice.
Difficulty using inside voice, and now all we need is during. And it could be multiple durings.
During a specific time.
Conversation.
During direction. During a time when directions are being given.
No, but he would be listening then.
No, because then he if somebody's trying to say something, he screams.
So would that be during conversations? No.
I don't know.
It's not a conversation. It's not a conversation. It's the task you're trying to do. Difficulty. He raises his voice when he doesn't understand
the.
Well, isn't it, Lee, when difficulty using an inside voice when it's when an academic task is presented? So difficulty using voice.
But I was trying to be specific.
When directions are given in literacy or directions are given.
Okay. I was right, because academics too big. I was trying to think.
Academics too big. And by the way, we're going to get a lot of, I get the feeling, we're going to get a lot here, right?
No.
There's a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot to get.
Indeed. Difficulty using inside voice when instructions are given during or for. Now let's make our list.
Okay. Well, for class activities, what could class activity be? For physical education.
For I mean,
For art projects.
Okay?
for hanging up backpack and coat.
Right.
Yeah, math. Yep.
Math.
Mhm.
Yes.
So now we just have to think about what we want our STEM to be. I understand that he's having difficulty using an inside voice. But is the fact that he's having difficulty using an inside voice just his way of letting us know that he's having difficulty with each of these things? Is John having difficulty following the instructions for phys ed?
Yes. I think that's what it's related to.
Is John having difficulty following the directions for art projects?
Yes.
Is John having difficulty hanging up his pack and coat?
Yes.
Pack and coat. Is John having difficulty in math?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm going to take out inside voice. I get it.
Yeah.
But I think that by the time he starts screaming, the expectation he's having difficulty meeting that comes before that has already happened, right? Then he has difficulty using an inside voice. But before that, he's having difficulty doing something. Would you agree with that?
Yes. Yes. And I wouldn't even say it's math. I would say it's written math, like pencil, paper. I think we can separate the math even from being even more specific.
Absolutely. Mo, what do you think?
But you agree sometimes he just isn't even aware, even like of his voice at all. He's got a really hot screeching and yelling even when he's doing something that's not frustrating or preferred. Maybe not.
Well, maybe if you have an example. Is there a time when he's having difficulty using an inside voice where the difficulty using the inside voice is not signaling to us that he's having difficulty meeting an expectation?
I guess I don't.
I don't think usually. I think that I hear what you're saying, Mo. I think usually it's in result of an expectation he can't meet.
Right.
Yeah, he's
Also-
already dysregulated, and it.
I hear what you're saying too, because if you ask him a question, and even if he just doesn't want to answer you, he grunts in a loud, like, oh, like, no. But that's not related to.
But
And sometimes
even that is late. Here's what I want to know. Are there any times when there's not something he's frustrated about or having difficulty doing, that is a time when you expect inside voices to be used, that he's still having difficulty using an inside voice? Anything unprompted by an expectation he's having difficulty meeting?
I don't think there is.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think that's usually frustration. I think the frustration and irritability is just most of the time. So then,
Yeah. So we don't exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. So our list of things that John is having, tasks and activities that John is having difficulty participating in and completing is going to be quite long. Do we want to be more specific about phys ed? Anything in particular in phys ed? Or just following the directions?
Following, I would say like following along as the directions vary.
multiple steps. Yeah.
Multiple
Oral.
steps are just too much for him.
And are there different activities in phys ed?
Yes. I mean, every week it's or every day that they go, it's a different activity. And so we try to pre-teach, but that, he still has a difficult time with following the steps.
Here's what I'm wondering. Because the wording of the unsolved problem on the ALSIP is the prompt that gets John talking. If we say to him, I notice that you're having difficulty following directions in phys ed, what's up? Is he going to know what we're talking about?
No.
Or is that not specific enough?
No. Yeah.
So how do we want to make that one more specific? The only way I can think of to make it more specific is by the activity of phys ed, what the directions are being given about. Kickball.
I was just going to
softball.
say, it was what I'm thinking of most specifically. I guess we could call it the hula hoop game.
Hula hoop game. Any other phys ed activities that come to mind that he's having difficulty following the directions?
That's what it looks like. People do get the hang of it fairly rapidly, and they would. Isn't it interesting all we have to go through to get simply to the expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting? I was hearing about pre-teaching in there. I was hearing about multiple steps. All these things that our minds are filled with that make it more difficult for us to actually nail down. He's having difficulty following the directions in the hula hoop game, right? Look how long it took to get there. It speeds up. I'm just saying. A lot of the difficulty here is what our minds are filled with in the first place. Really interesting. All right, enough of that. Let's, oh yeah. Well, they probably named another one. That's usually where I stop it. Yes. Yes. Well, that's one of the possible things that happens after you say what's up that we're covering today. So give me till lunch and we'll probably be done with that part. Cool? Here's what, go ahead. Or remaining quiet. Remaining quiet. That's something you have to get past to get to the. You don't know if the kid's listening. That's one of the verbs I probably wouldn't use, but you do know if they're remaining quiet. Okay? Maybe what? Well, that's because by the time the kid is having difficulty using an inside voice, and this is why I show that, there was already an expectation the kid was having difficulty meeting. So what I was probing for was, is there ever a time that he has difficulty using an inside voice where there's not an expectation he's having difficulty meeting? And they concluded, no. Then I'm going to drop difficulty using an inside voice because that's just the signal. That's just the frustration response. That's the aftermath. That's late, however you want to say it. And go upstream. What's he having difficulty with before he's having difficulty using an inside voice? In which case, remaining quiet is pretty much off my radar screen because that's late. Make sense? That's when we started talking about difficulty following the directions of the hula hoop game. That would be a time when he's having trouble using an inside voice, but it's when he's having difficulty following the directions of the hula hoop game that he signals that to us by having difficulty using an inside voice. One's early, the other's later. Following? Here's what I'd like you to do. We're going back to this slide. I'd like you to, go ahead. Here's why I wouldn't in this instance. The questions that I asked them suggested that that was not the case. Because he's only having difficulty using an inside voice when he's having difficulty with something else. That's not hearing. Make sense? So I would not routinely have a kid check for hearing. And especially based on what I heard, I wouldn't have this kid check for hearing. It's not hearing. It's an unsolved problem, and difficulty using an inside voice is the frustration response. That's not hearing. Make sense? And I know I'm glad you figured it out with that kid. I don't think that's what's going on with this kid because the questions I asked them. Good? Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to are any of you sitting as a group of people who work at the same school? Is that whole table the same school? So it's U3, U3, U4. If you have multiple people here from the same school, I would like you to have an ASIP meeting about a particular student together. Good? Assuming you all know the same kid. Good? Shh. What? Assuming you know the same kid. Good? If you are not here as a school, what I'd like you to do is pair up with the person sitting next to you, and you're going to have an ASIP meeting between the two of you. If you have an odd number of people at your table, then you can pair up somebody with somebody behind you. Okay? So you guys have 5, you guys have 5, 2 of you can pair up, whatever. I'd like one of you, you're going to skip the lagging skills section. Excuse me, skip the skills section. Don't do the skills. What I'd like you to do, because this is going to be the fastest ASIP meeting you ever have, I'm only giving you 8 to 10 minutes. Start with the first prompt, and then start writing good unsolved problems. But if you are paired up, one of you is running the meeting to elicit information from the other person about a kid the other person knows well. The person running the meeting is asking the questions and trying to word things well. The person who knows the kid well is providing the information. This assumes that you don't both know the same kid because you never met each other before. Make sense? What I'd like you to do is pay attention to the strategies at the bottom of the screen. I want you to remember that guideline number 3 is the one you're going to have the most difficulty with, so be super vigilant about that one. In about 8 minutes, I'm going to tell you to stop. I'm going to have y'all read us some unsolved problems, and we're going to see how you did based on the guidelines. Good? If you don't have a student you know well, you can do this on your own kid. If you don't have either of those, you can do this on your significant other. Although you might prefer to do that in your own time. Ready? If you have any questions, just ask. Go ahead. Okay. Let's see how you did. Hopefully you noticed that there is a big difference between talking about, hopefully, can I stay there? Hopefully you noticed that there is a big difference between talking about unsolved problems versus talking about theories and behaviors. That's a different meeting. You also may have noticed that it's not so easy to write unsolved problems. Only in the beginning. This is an acquired art. It doesn't take that long. But that's because us caregivers are a whole lot better at noticing when the kid is doing something we don't want them to do than we are at knowing what our expectations are in the first place. The hard part about the ASIP is knowing what your expectation is in the first place. If you know what your expectation is, all you got to do is put the word difficulty in front of it and you're there. That's the hard part. But let's see how you did. This is the key to this, because this is the feedback part. This is very much a practice and feedback model. Now you get feedback. You have two choices as you're reading an unsolved problem. First of all, it's your choice whether to read one, but you can either say you feel that it's pretty good. Pretty good means one thing. It meets the 4 guidelines. It's all pretty good means, right? So as I'm listening for, does that unsolved problem meet the guidelines? Your other option is to ask for help right from the beginning, right? You get to declare it, either very good or I need help. Who wants to go first? Okay. Those are good. Difficulty, did you say circle time? Yes, circle time. Difficulty keeping hands to self during circle time is good. The only thing I would ask is whether we could move it on to the next level of specificity, namely, is there, and I would go with strategy number 1 here. I'm going to be pointing out the strategies whenever I remember to. Strategy number 1 is there a who? I already know when, circle time. Is there a particular who, like the kid sitting next, your son sitting next to? Is there a who?
Not specifically there, but on the playground.
Okay. So difficulty keeping hands to self during circle time is fine. Difficulty keeping hands to self on the playground, there I would probably ask with who and when. Can you fill it to move it to the next level of specificity? With who and when? There's actually another person in the world named Alfie, besides Alfie Kohn. Do you all know Alfie Kohn? Yes? Very few people know I went to summer camp with Alfie Kohn. Alfie Kohn wrote Punished by Rewards. Because we went to summer camp together, I've seen Alfie Kohn naked. He hates when I say that. He finds that extremely embarrassing. I just want you to know that's the only reason I know what Alfie Kohn looks like naked, and that was a long time ago. Who? Alfie, during what?
When they want the same item.
Difficulty sharing, keeping hands to self. Sharing comes before the difficulty keeping hands to self. Am I right? Difficulty sharing toys with Alfie on the playground would be earlier. That is a great example of moving it earlier. Now let me ask about circle time. Anything going on at circle time that precedes difficulty keeping hands to self?
I do not know because I'm not there.
Okay, so we could either inquire further or just write that one in. Here's what you want to remember. See bullet number 4 there? The wording of the unsolved problem is the conversation starter. It's your entry point. That's why the wording's important. I still think that as a conversation starter, even if you don't know who and over what during circle time, the conversation will begin, that your son will start talking. The more specific you are, the better the conversation starter, the better the entry point. But I think that would get him talking. So while I would prefer that it be more specific, I'm not too worried about that one in terms of will it get him talking. Make sense? Here's what I'll also say. The entry point in this model to getting the conversation going is the unsolved problem. What is a more typical but far less productive entry point? The concerning behavior being caused by that unsolved problem. That entry point often causes kids not to talk. And I'm just saying what I've been saying for the last day and a half, but I'm saying it in a different way. Trying to talk with kids about their behavior is a bad entry point. Trying to talk with kids about unsolved problems, a much better entry point. But what I mean by entry point is getting in, right? Finding out what's going on. Behavior, not a good entry point. Unsolved problems, excellent entry point. You didn't need as much help as you guys thought you did.
Actually, so Shiva
into a more specific. I'm going to ask, so let me go back. What are you saying no about?
Access to a particular item or activity.
So tell me give me the lowdown on what is going on with access to the particular item or activity.
Teacher tells him, no, you cannot have that toy right now, and he will, the behaviors of the kid at that.
Got it. So he wants a particular toy, and it's not the time that we're playing with toys. We could write that one as, notice we're about to move on from difficulty with the word no, right? Difficulty playing with toys only during choice time. Make sense? You can tell I've been doing this a long time because they come to me. Some still give me some still challenge me. That's how I'd probably write that one, right? Could be. Although from what I was hearing, he wants to play with toys when it's not okay to play with toys. I don't know how I would make that earlier, but what were you thinking? Oh, excellent. Excellent. And so I wouldn't ask what does he not want to be doing, because that's leading the witness. What's he supposed to be doing when he wants to be playing with a toy? Do we know? So, and by the way, it's hard for parents to write unsolved problems for school. Better for them to write the unsolved problems, right? So we need to get that piece of information. Good, excellent point. Who wants to go next? Difficulty staying in seat during lunchtime in the classroom. Whatever. I know 10th graders who have that problem. So I don't think that part matters, right? Here's the interesting piece, whether it's a 10th grader or a kindergartner. I like this one because it lets me ask the following question. Ready? Kenny? Okay. Thank you for answering no. I didn't think so. Well, you just said yes. I know. Thought maybe you changed your mind. Okay, so we do not believe he can sit in his seat during lunch in the classroom, right? The teacher does. That's why ALSIP meetings are also fun, because different people have different ideas about what a kid can do. So you have my imperfect algorithm. If he can do it sometimes, it's probably in range. If he can never do it, it's probably out of range. The teacher may not necessarily believe he can. The teacher may believe he needs to. Correct? There's a difference, right? I'm not asking if he needs to. I'm asking if he can. Because as we know, and this is a great ALSIP meeting discussion, this is where we sort this stuff out. I don't want to put expectations on kids. This is so perfect. I don't want to put expectations on kids they can't meet, right? That's what leads to concerning behavior that, for our purposes, or stated purposes anyways, can lead a kid to be restrained or secluded. All because we missed the boat on whether the kid can or just needs to. That has nothing to do with the kid. Exactly. So, do I want to see a kid restrained and secluded because adult expectations are out of whack? Right. That's a tragedy. That's a kid paying the price for out of whack adult expectations. That's why ASIP meetings are so critical. We have got to get that sorted out, right? And it's sometimes I come across caregivers who think the kid needs to, and that's as far as they went, right? They don't go to Kenny. They stop at needs to. They need to move forward. Kenny. And if the answer is no, we just saved that kid a bunch of restraints and seclusions. We also saved that classroom teacher a lot of time. We may have given that classroom teacher some new lenses. You know the classroom teacher, obviously. I see you making faces. But, of course, Kenny versus does he need to someday leads to some very interesting discussions. Like I've had discussions with parents where a 6-year-old couldn't do something. And I've said, can he do that? No, not yet. Why are we putting that expectation on him? Well, because he's going to need to when he's 18. Yeah, but he's 6. No, I know, but he's going to be 18 someday. Why don't we meet him where he's at? And if things go well, I'm optimistic about what 18 is going to look like. But if you're shooting for 18 when he's 6, I'm not optimistic at all. These are very important ASIP meeting discussions, right? Well, if this is okay, so well, it all depends on the degree to which the teacher is open to input, and it depends on what your role is. Well, whatever. I don't think you're done in March, but got it. So this all becomes very fascinating because now you probably have a kid who's going to get referred to special ed. Got it. I'm just saying these are the structures that occur, and now I'll just be blunt, when problems don't get identified and solved. We've got all of this infrastructure in place, but at the beginning, before the infrastructure kicks in, are a bunch of unsolved problems. And related to the unsolved problems are expectations that are being placed on kids that they can't yet meet. And the mentality that if the kid is just motivated enough, or if we are creative enough, the kid can meet the expectation they can't meet. And what's interesting is if it's poor motivation, we're doing something to the kid. And if it's because of us, we blame ourselves for the fact that the kid isn't meeting the expectation. Because we didn't have the teaching resources within ourselves to get the kid there, because anything's possible. Anything's not possible. Am I making sense? Look at all the infrastructure that's in place, and people are complaining that they don't have time. A big part of why they don't have time is because of the infrastructure that's in place that isn't working. All this starts with the assessment of skills and unsolved problems and these kinds of discussions. Who else wants to read us a few unsolved problems? Go ahead. Some days it's what else can go wrong. We're in one of them. Sometimes they smooth out. This kid you're talking about is your own. No. It's a kid you work with. Does the kid have words? This is a critical question. Some written. And your expectation is that they will use words to make friendships? I think we got to go back and think about what our expectations are. But you just told me that she doesn't speak at all. She only speaks through the written word. If prompted. But you are getting 0 spoken words from this kid. Do we understand why? Can she speak? Okay, then I'm going to put that into my imperfect algorithm. We've never seen it. If we've never seen it, we should not be expecting it. Okay? So I'm not sure I would not throw that unsolved problem at the kid. I don't know, because that one feels out of range in a non-speaking kid. And I think that it's going to be a process that probably is going to involve a speech and language pathologist to do some evaluating on what this kid is capable of, but I'm not going to present that unsolved problem to a non-speaking kid. It's like saying to me, I've noticed that you're not 6'2". Seriously, what's up? My mother smoked when she was pregnant with me. We're going nowhere, right? So that's not an unsolved problem I would present to a kid. It is an unsolved problem I would think to myself and say to myself, what do we need to do to evaluate what we've got here so that we are not, number one, so that we're making some headway here, but it's not a problem I would solve collaboratively with a non-speaking kid. Unless I think that with a kid, I've got some strategies for you later that might help. It's just that it's not an unsolved problem I would present to a kid. That would be not a bad place to start, but I wouldn't do it on something like friendships. You know what I'm saying? That feels like a very, that's a big bridge to cross. I'm just trying to figure out how to communicate with this kid. And she only communicates through the spoken word, through the written word. She communicate with anybody. Okay, so I'm taking a step back and saying, what do I think this kid is capable of doing right now? What are my priorities for her beginning to express in the spoken word? But I'd want to get somebody weighing in on whether they even think the spoken word is in the cards at the moment before I start shooting for it. That's mostly because I've never met the kid. I've never observed the kid. I don't know what the kid can do. That's probably as far as I can take you on a kid who no one has seen speak in 2 years. If I ask the parents if the kid spoke at home, that might give me some information. That might be useful. Has the kid ever used the spoken word? Has the kid ever used the spoken word? I know you've been with her for 2 years and you got nothing. Have they ever seen anything? This has speech and language pathologists written all over it. Make sense? Others, go ahead. This is from the people who are watching. That's fine. The only thing is they're not that different. There's still an expectation the kid is having difficulty meeting, but do we have any secondary unsolved problems? Go ahead. Difficulty entering math class. What do y'all think? I like it. Wait, let's just make sure. They're having difficulty coming into the room? I'm tempted to ask what are they doing instead, but that would be a little later. Okay, difficulty coming into the math class. Go ahead. Difficulty keeping phone put away during ELA class. Excellent, common. It could be. I would write a second unsolved problem for that, related to what the kid is supposed to be doing instead. Good, what's that? Bit clumped. Independent work refers to a variety of things. Keep going. By the way, for the folks who are watching, I'm going to try to repeat these, but that's not my best thing. Having difficulty getting started on writing an ALA, clumped. You'll have to split that up. On what would be my question if I was in your ASIC? Difficulty stopping playing with toys to come in for dinner would be fine. Let's do one more. Go ahead. So difficulty going to school. Yeah, but difficulty, the big challenge means you've got a long list of unsolved problems, right? That's what big challenge means. Difficulty going to school is no longer an unsolved problem, apparently, because he is going.
Yes, he's going now.
We would list each classroom that he's having difficulty going to as a separate unsolved problem, and that's where we would start.
Use the pencil, he don't write.
You have a long list of unsolved problems.
But the challenge is how we can solve the problem to him or to each other.
Right.
Sorry for my English, it's my second language.
Your English is fine. I'm catching everything.
I can,
But you weren't here yesterday?
in Zoom, I was in Zoom.
You were in Zoom. So you got a little bit of a sample of what it looks like to solve a problem.
I see the videos and the videos
Yep.
open my mind.
Good. That's what you're going to be doing.
Yes.
But you're going to be seeing a lot more videos today. You know there are 3 steps. Yesterday you saw an empathy step with Andrea, and a define adult concern step and an invitation with Anthony. Yesterday you learned that the empathy step begins with an introduction. The introduction begins with the words "I've noticed that" and ends with the words "what's up," and you learned that in between you are sandwiching the unsolved problem that you meant to be talking with the kid about. Yesterday you learned that after you say "what's up," one of 5 things is going to happen next. The kid is going to say something. The kid is going to, which we covered. The other 4 we're going to cover today. The kid is going to say nothing or "I don't know." This goes to a question we had earlier. The kid says, "I don't have a problem with that," or "I don't care." We're going to cover that. Possibly number 4, the kid's going to say, "I don't want to talk about it right now." And possibly number 5, the kid's going to become defensive and say something like, "I don't have to talk to you." We're going to cover all of them. But what we're going to do first is cover the 4 drilling strategies we didn't cover yesterday, and then do some practice at drilling strategy recognition. This is the best way I know how to help you move from knowing about drilling strategies in the abstract to recognizing them when they're being used. That's a pretty critical next step. Yesterday you learned about reflective listening. You learned about W questions. You learned about the discrepant observation, and you learned about summarizing and asking for more. Let me cover the other 4 that we didn't cover, and I'm going to show you a video containing at least 6 and maybe 7 of the drilling strategies, and I'm going to be asking you to keep score of what drilling strategy you're seeing. Cool? Let me cover the other 4, though. Strategy number 3 is asking about the situational variability of the unsolved problem. It's a really good drilling strategy. It's not one of your top 3. Your top 3 are number 1, number 2, and number 8. Asking about the situational variability of the unsolved problem might sound like this. It's basically asking the question, how come the kid can meet the expectation under some conditions and not others? I may have said this yesterday. You know the most common adult explanation for why the kid can meet the expectation sometimes and not others? The most common thing said is, he can do it when he wants to. That's just proof that they don't yet understand why the kid can meet the expectation sometimes and not others. So we're going to ask. You and Chad get along very well during choice time. Help me understand what's going on during recess. Or sometimes you come to school, sometimes you don't. Help me understand that better. That's strategy number 3. You're going to see it in the video. Strategy number 4, you are not going to see in the video. Asking the kid what they are thinking in the midst of the unsolved problem. Notice I didn't say feeling. I'm not allergic to asking kids what they feel. I just don't get the information I'm looking for when I ask them what they feel. When I ask them what they feel, I get something like happy, sad, frustrated, embarrassed, but do I yet know what's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectation? No. I'm going to ask them what they're thinking. You're not going to see that one. I don't know if you're going to see that one today, even though I actually use that one a fair amount. Strategy number 5. So here's what were you thinking when Mrs. Thompson told the class to get to work on their social studies projects? I was thinking I can't get to work on my social studies project. Now strategy number 2. What was it? What is it about the social studies project that was making it hard for you to get to work on it? Well, she told us we're supposed to be working on the introduction right now, and she said the introduction is supposed to be a summary of the rest of the paper, but I was having trouble with the rest of the paper, so I couldn't write the introduction. And when I asked her for help, she told me she wasn't going to help me because now that I'm in the 6th grade, I ought to be able to do it all on my own. Good to know. So what were you thinking when Mrs. Thompson told the class to get to work on their social studies projects? I was thinking I was probably just going to be sitting there again, and she was probably going to throw me out of her class again. Good to know. Strategy number 5, breaking the unsolved problem down into its component parts. Some people might call this a task analysis. Some unsolved problems have multiple components. Getting ready for school in the morning has multiple components. Getting ready for bed at night has multiple components. Coming into the classroom and getting ready to get down to work has multiple components. Sometimes you have to break the unsolved problem down into its component parts to figure out which component is the hard component. Here's what that might sound like. I've noticed you have difficulty coming into the classroom in the morning and getting down to work. What's up? I don't know. Would it help if we thought about what you have to do to get down to work when you come in the classroom in the morning? Okay. Well, let's think about what you got to do. You have to hang up your coat. Is that part hard for you? No. You have to put your boots in the cubby. That part hard for you? No. You have to sit down at your desk and start the do now. Is that part hard for you? Yes. Now we're rolling. What's hard about starting the do now? So now you're on to other drilling strategies, but at least now you know what you're focused on. That's strategy number 5. And then finally, strategy number 7, tabling and asking for more. In both, and you are going to see that one in the video. Tabling and asking for more. You know, in both cases, whether it's tabling or summarizing, in both cases you're asking for more. The only difference is what you're saying before that. With summarizing, as you saw with Andrea yesterday, you are recapping what you've heard from the kids so far and asking for more. With tabling, you are metaphorically removing what you've heard so far and asking for more. Let me give you examples of both to make sure that's clear. Here's summarizing. So the reason you're having difficulty coming back into the classroom after recess is because you're thinking about Puerto Rico and it's making you very sad. Now the next part. Is there anything else making it hard for you to come back into the classroom after recess? Summarizing, asking for more. Here's the exact same information, but I'm going to table it instead. So if you weren't thinking about Puerto Rico when you were coming back into the classroom after recess, would there be anything else making it hard for you to come back into the classroom after recess? 2 different ways of accomplishing the same mission. In the case of summarizing, you're just recapping. In the case of tabling, you are metaphorically removing. In both instances, you're asking for more. You are going to see tabling in this video. It will become even clearer then. Cool? Time to meet Mrs. Plumpton and Bobby. Mrs. Plumpton, this is another school among the ones in Maine that were implementing this model. Mrs. Plumpton was among the people in the building who were getting good at the model first. Mrs. Plumpton was as plan A as the day is long. About a year before this video was filmed, I think you will see just how far she's come. Thankfully, she was open-minded and brave and willing to try new things if she thought it would benefit her students, so good for her. I think you're going to see some excellent drilling from Mrs. Plumpton. She asked me to sit in to help her out because she was having difficulty getting Bobby to talk. So I'm in there too, but she's doing fine without me. I jump in around midstream. Bobby's home situation is not ideal back when this was filmed. This is this school is in a neighborhood in which 95% of the crime in this town occurs. Tough crowd. What else do I want you to know? The unsolved problem. Difficulty sitting on the floor during the school day. I hope you quickly recognize that to be clumped. What I don't remember is if Mrs. Plumpton knew why Bobby was having difficulty sitting on the floor during the school day. If she did know, then it's definitely clumped. If she didn't know, we will find out at around minute number 13 exactly when Bobby's having difficulty sitting on the floor during the school day. And then, of course, the question would have been, if she'd have known, we might have been able to save 13 minutes, but how badly do we feel about the 13 minutes? Good? But here we go. I'm going to jump in when Mrs. Plumpton needs help. What I'd like you to do is keep score. And I'm going to help you out for the first 3 minutes. I'm going to tell you what drilling strategies you're seeing for the first 3 minutes, then you're on your own.
So Bobby, I noticed during the school day that when I call the boys and girls to sit on the floor, that sometimes that's hard for you. Can you tell me about that?
I just don't like to sit on the floor.
So you tell me you don't like to sit on the floor. And what is it about sitting on the floor that you don't like? What makes it hard for you to sit there?
Sometimes when I have these on, it pushes and hurts me.
Oh, so it might be your clothes. Okay.
He said sometimes it's the buttons. She said sometimes it's the clothes. Close enough. Reflective listening. Yes?
Anything else?
There's dirt.
Excuse me?
There's dirt.
Dirt. Oh. So
Sand.
dirt. You don't like the dirt on the floor. And
There's dirt. There's dirt. You get the idea.
so what if there was no dirt on the floor and you had pants that didn't have those snaps?
Oh,
Would it still be hard
God's
for you to come
sakes.
sit on the floor? It wouldn't?
So I don't know if you've noticed, but Mrs. Plumpton's mouth is no longer moving. She's not a ventriloquist. It does mean we're starting this over. I do not know what's going on today. Yes, you can answer a quick question. Well, that would be a great solution, except that this is the empathy step. In the empathy step, all we're doing is gathering information. We are not coming up with solutions. And I'm really glad you asked that, because you are going to see, that was quite a sneeze, because you are going to see in this video, are we back? Come on, let's work. You're going to see in this video that if you jump quickly to a solution, you're going to miss a lot. In the empathy step, all you're doing is gathering information. We are not solution machines in this model. We are gathering information, and based on what we learn, we are coming up with solutions in collaboration with the kid. Good? You're waiting until the process plays out before you start thinking about solutions. Make sense? We're still going to play the process out, because I don't come to solutions until I know everything that's going on related to an unsolved problem. And as you're going to see by the end of this, what we find out, especially at the end of the video, sitting on a chair would not address what's really going on here.
So Bobby, I noticed during the school day that when I call the boys and girls to sit on the floor, that sometimes that's hard for you. Can you tell me about that?
I just don't like to sit on the floor.
So you tell me you don't like to sit on the floor.
So we already established reflective listening. We've also already established we're not saying, why don't you sit in a chair?
What is it about sitting on the floor that you don't like? What makes it hard for you to sit there?
Sometimes when I have these it pushes and hurts me.
Oh, so it might be your clothes.
Score is now reflective listening 2. We've heard nothing else yet.
Okay. Anything else?
There's dirt.
Excuse me?
There's dirt.
Dirt. Oh, so
Sand.
dirt. You don't like the dirt on the floor.
3 reflective listenings. Yes?
And so what if there was no dirt on the floor and you had pants that didn't have those snaps? Would it still be hard for you to come sit on the floor?
That's tabling. Except she got the ending wrong. She said if there was no dirt, if there was no buttons, would you still have difficulty sitting on the floor? That's not how you're ending it. He's shaking his head no. But you would say, would there be anything else making it hard for you to sit on the floor? Well, mostly because the reason you're tabling is to see if there's anything more. The reason you're summarizing is to see if there's anything more.
You'd be able to come with all the boys and girls and sit?
He's saying that if there was no dirt and there were no buttons, he'd be able to sit on the floor. She knows that's not true. What drilling strategy do you think she's about to pick? The discrepant observation.
Because what I've noticed is, I know in the morning the floor is nice and clean, right? Because Mr. Lane cleans it up for us. And it's still difficult for you to come and sit on the floor. So yeah, I see you shaking your head, yes. So can you tell me some more about that so I can understand a little better what makes that part hard for you? You're not sure? So if we had a clean floor and you had different pants on, you would always come and sit for the meetings and the lessons on the floor? And what about the days when the floor is clean and you haven't come over?
So she's trying the same approach. This is the second repetition of the discrepant observation. It's going to yield no fruit. So she's going to have to move on to something else.
So what about when we talked one time about if I only had 5 children in the class, right? And would that make it easier for you to sit as a group? And so what's easier about sitting with 5 kids rather than 16 kids?
You haven't seen that one before. That's strategy number 3. How come you can under the condition of 5 kids, but it's harder under the condition of 16?
What makes that easier for you?
It's more or less children, and it's not going to be loud talking.
Oh, so the loud talking. So that might be a problem since a lot of people, might be a lot of talking going on. And what is it about the talking that bothers you?
I don't know.
All right, we could come back to that.
So that was a W question. What is it about? I think there was one earlier that I forgot to point out to you.
Let's give him a
Okay,
think about that.
okay, good. Think about that a little more. What is it about the talking?
Sometimes in music, when they talk really loud, it gives me headaches. And sometimes when they're talking like really loud, and you say like earlier you had a mean voice, like you were screaming.
That I had a mean voice when I was screaming?
It sounded like you were.
It is at this point that we say poor Mrs. Plumpton, because she has graciously agreed to do this. I'm in the room with her. Some people find that to be intimidating, but mostly she knows that I show these videos all over the world. So the entire world knows that Mrs. Plumpton has a mean voice and is a screamer at this point. She's fine. She might be regretting her decision, but she's fine.
You were screaming.
Okay, and that bothers you because it's too loud? Is that what I'm understanding? That you're saying if it gets too loud, it bothers you, whether it's talking?
And when you say boys and girls, like really loud.
Oh, sometimes I say it loud, yes. Because we've talked, oh, that's what you're talking about, because in class I've talked about that I just tend to have a very loud voice. I try to tone it down, but I do talk loud, yes. We've talked about that before. Okay, so and do you know why? Like, what is it about that bothers you?
I get headaches.
It gives you a headache. And what happens when you get the headache? Can you tell me a little more about that?
Lots of W questions in there, but I'm not putting them all out to you at this point.
Sometimes when you don't let me come down, when people keep getting more and more louder, it just makes my head blow.
And what do you mean by that?
Like, there's so much talking in my head.
Oh, so is talking, can you tell me more about the talking in your head? No. Is it can you tell me if it's the talking in the classroom?
It's the talking in the classroom.
So let me see where we're at.
Let me see where we're at. Any guesses on the strategy that's about to be used? Excellent.
I'm understanding that it's hard for you to come and sit on the floor because sometimes there's dirt on the floor. Sometimes the buttons on your pants are uncomfortable when you have to sit on the floor. And sometimes it's too loud when we're sitting in a big group. But you feel if you sat in a small group, if we only had a few kids in the room, that it wouldn't be as loud. All right, so now, so we have some ideas about what's bothering you with sitting with the group. I'm still not sure I understand all of it.
And that's thing I don't like too is sometimes when I don't even do something, people blame it on me.
So is that only when you're in a big group, or is that just any time?
It's anytime.
Anytime, okay. So that's another concern for you, is that if you were sitting, just what I'm understanding, that if you were sitting on the floor, you might get blamed for something that you didn't do. And so when you're not sitting on the floor, where do you prefer to sit?
At my desk.
At your desk. And why do you like it at your desk?
I don't know. Just as a seat.
Because I'm just wondering, because we're still in the classroom, and so if there is noise, the noise is still going on, correct? So how is it better to sit at your desk and not sit on the floor where I'm teaching the boys and girls a lesson?
I don't know.
Because that I'm a little confused. I need more information about that. Because the noise is still in the room, right? But it's better for you at the desk by yourself. Can you think for a minute? Think what makes that better?
Okay, so she's looking at me out of the corner of her eye. I'm thinking she's looking for help. I told her I'd jump in if she needed me. Looks like she needs me. I'm going to jump in.
Can we go back one sec?
Sure.
One part I don't quite understand. I know that the group, there's something loud that could be going on in the group, but I can't tell if could be both, could be one or the other. Is it that the kids are loud, their voices are loud, or is it that Miss Plumpton's voice gets loud when the kids are loud? Both. So it's both. And is either of those better? If I can let me think about the things that we know so far. The buttons in your pants could bother you. They could hurt. The floor could be dirty. I could see how sitting at your seat at your desk would take care of the dirty floor. Yes? Does sitting at your seat at the desk take care of the buttons too?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Does sitting at your desk take care of the loud noise of the group? No. Does sitting at the desk take care of Miss Plumpton's loud voice telling the kids to be quiet? Does it help with that?
There's something. When I'm like near her desk, so when it's like really loud, when she like hollers at the kids, it's going right into my ear.
Got it. But if you're sitting at your desk, your desk is near. I don't quite understand.
He's saying his desk is usually near mine, but I'm not usually near my desk.
By the way, we need to give Miss Plumpton a lot of credit here. She is demonstrating that she's willing to hear if there's something she's doing that's making it difficult for Bobby. She gets 100 points for that. But here's the deal. I'm always giving people some advance notice about this. If you're not willing to hear how you might be affecting the kid, I'm not sure why we didn't do plan B, because then the basic message you're sending to the kid is, I'm willing to listen to anything that might be hard for you, except if it has something to do with me. That you have to edit out, because I can't handle it. So I'm always telling people, if you're going to do plan B, going along with that is your willingness to hear whether there's something you're doing that's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectation. Mrs. Plumpton's doing great.
Sometimes you learn what you're
Sometimes,
learning.
yes, absolutely.
And during the groups, are you near your desk?
When they're sitting on the floor?
Yeah.
No,
So-
the students.
So if you're further away from the group, maybe her voice would be less loud? No?
And another thought I had is, I know there's times when it's quiet in the room and the boys and girls are sitting there, and that still is a hard time for you to come and sit on the floor and listen to the lesson or the story, and my voice isn't loud.
Let me ask it this way.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Let's say that you were wearing pants with no buttons, so the button problem wasn't there, right? Let's say the floor was perfectly clean. Well, let me ask this, is there any such thing as a perfectly clean floor? No. I guess I'm wondering about that one too. Well, let me ask you this, if you were allowed to sit in a chair in the group, would that take care of that problem? It would?
So now you might be thinking, am I proposing a solution? I am not. I'm just going back to the discussion we were having 5 minutes earlier about what sitting in the chair would fix. I am not proposing it as a solution.
Okay. So the dirty floor is a little bit of a problem, yes? Because there's no floor that's clean enough. True?
Because sometimes when stuff is sticky, it gets onto my pants and I get hollered at by my mom.
Uh-huh. So dirty pants doesn't go over so well at home, huh? Okay. Let's say, let's imagine this picture. Are you ready? You're wearing pants with no buttons, so there's no problem there. You're sitting in a chair in the group instead of on the floor, so no problem there, right? The group is very quiet, and Miss Plumpton is being very quiet too. Is there anything else about the group that's hard for you besides those things? Or do you think like now you're able to participate in the group?
Elijah whispers things in my ears.
Elijah whispering things into your ears, that would be a problem too.
Now, what strategy am I using right now? Tabling. I'm sorry? Elijah's whispering in his ear. So I'm tabling, and here's the deal on tabling. The reason you're tabling or summarizing is to see if there's something else that you haven't heard yet. If you do hear something you haven't heard yet, what should you do? You should try to understand it better. What did I do? Not that. I tabled that too. So don't do what you're about to see me doing, with that new piece of information?
What if Elijah wasn't in the group?
Don't do that. It's a new piece of information. Drill on it. That's why you tabled in the first place.
Now we good? Or is there something else about the group that's hard for you?
No, it's that.
That's it?
That too.
But which two?
Elijah whispering things in my ear.
Right, let's say we didn't even have Elijah in your group.
I did it again.
So we took care of that problem. How's the group going for you now? No Elijah, no buttons, no floor, no noise.
Still, I hate it.
Still you hate it.
I guess we're not through drilling yet.
What is it that you still hate about it?
I don't know.
That was a slightly different tone.
What goes on in a group that you hate? I don't even know what you do in your groups. What's a group? What's Miss Plumpton do in a group that you hate?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So it's not what I'm teaching that we don't like. That's okay, that part.
I like the daily 5 chart.
Yeah. And what is it about that that you like?
I get to do writing.
You can do writing. And what else is it about that that you like?
Nothing, I just like to write.
You like the writing? Do you like to do the read to someone? You like to do listening? Listening to reading? Do you like to do read to self? Just the writing part. And what is it about writing that you like?
Remember that day you said I could draw for 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we talked about that because writing has been difficult too, and you felt if you could draw for a few minutes first, then you could write. And we just started that agreement. So that's why you're liking writing right now. Right, but we need to get back to and isn't the daily 5, do you usually sit in a group?
Sometimes.
What kind of group would you be sitting in? Like the whole
Group.
class or just one other student?
The whole class.
Well, that's when the boys and girls make their choices, right? But then when you're actually doing the work, are you sitting in a group? You are? Okay. But that's a choice, right, that you make. We're not sitting in a whole class group, are we?
Now, Mrs. Plumpton's getting a little caught up in the weeds here. Here's what you want to remember, because it's easy to get caught up in the weeds. You can use drilling strategies in the service of getting caught up in the weeds, right? I've seen it many times. Here's the question you're trying to answer by drilling. What's making it hard for this kid to meet this expectation? If you're in the weeds, that's probably not what you're trying to answer. So while you're drilling, you are consciously thinking, what I'm supposed to be getting at here is what's making it hard for the kid to meet the expectation. If you've deviated from that, you're probably in the weeds and you're probably wasting time. Good? She's in the weeds. Here's what sometimes happens when you get caught up in the weeds.
When people make their choices? No. It's either a small little group, 1 or 2 kids, right?
So I thought I heard something important in that.
Yeah.
And there he goes. So one thought people have when they see that Bobby seems to have left the conversation is, should we end? No. Not just because you lost him for a second. Maybe you can get him back. So just because a kid looks like he's gone for now doesn't mean he's gone. You might be able to get him back. But number 2, if he is gone, if we're done for the day, how bad do I feel about that? Not bad at all. First of all, there's no guarantee you're going to get through all 3 steps in one day. Depends on how much time you have. Depends on how long the empathy step takes in particular. There's no guarantee you're going to get through all 3 steps. If you don't get through all 3 steps, you pick it up again the next day. You might not even get through the empathy step the first day, right? So no guarantees there. Now, what was I going to say? If we're done, I just got 13 minutes and 40 seconds out of this kid who's never done this before. I'll take it. Second grader, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but second grader, 13 minutes and 40 seconds. I've gotten a treasure trove of information from him. I'm happy. Mission accomplished for the day. But I do want to see if we can get him back. I don't know that. Hang in there. We're not done with the empathy step yet. That might be true of your kid. It might not be true of this kid. Let's keep listening.
Bobby?
Yes, Bobby.
If it's writing, you're okay being in a group. Yes. How about if it's reading?
We must be at the 13-minute and 53 seconds mark. We just learned how the unsolved problem could have been worded if Mrs. Plumpton knew. Difficulty sitting on the floor during reading group might have saved us 13 minutes and 53 seconds. And the truth is, I'm not even sure it's the floor. I might have written it as difficulty participating in the small reading group. But now we're going to hear something that isn't sensory and something that sitting in the chair wouldn't touch. Make sense?
That's very interesting. That's actually, well, what is it about reading that you don't like? Or that, I don't know
I
what
just don't like to read.
you don't like to read. Are you good at it? You're good at reading. Something about reading that's hard for you?
I just don't like to do it.
Don't like to do it.
I've heard you read. You've read with me, and you've done a nice job.
I know.
And you tell me about books that you like.
Yeah, it's just I don't like to read.
Is it reading, you don't like to read out loud? Do you like to read quietly in your head with a book? You do like to read in your head? Okay. So you don't like the part when you have to sit with a group and read out loud?
How do you feel about listening to other kids reading? No. What don't you like about that?
I don't know.
So you're okay reading in your head, right? If you had a book and you just were reading it by yourself, that would be okay. But if you had to do, like, read to someone where someone might read to you, that part you don't like? But we're not sure what it is you don't like about it?
So you're not going to hear him say it. But what he's, because the bell rang and I thought we were done. So I turned off the video camera. I found out we weren't done. He started talking again. I didn't want to tell him to stop talking so I could turn on the video camera. But here's what he said next. The kids in the reading group were giving each other a hard time when they made a mistake. He didn't like that being done to him. He didn't like that being done to other kids. And that was the end of the empathy step. So now let's talk about what you just saw. First of all, you just saw why you keep drilling until there is no more. Because, and I always say this is not just for your purposes, for your sake, if we had stopped on the buttons and the dirt, we would have probably had him in a chair, and we would never have even heard about the fact that kids were giving each other a hard time when they made a mistake in reading group. Right? You drill until there's no more. In this model, you are out of the habit of hearing a problem and throwing a solution into the hopper. In this model, that's poor form. But also, you wouldn't have heard it if you'd have done that. And that stuff you heard at the end is what you want to hear. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned this yesterday. Probably not. But we're not going to be able to address all of those concerns in one solution. So before we enter the invitation, we're going to have to prioritize. What are we going to address with this Plan B? What are we going to address with a subsequent Plan B? Whose decision is it? It's the kids. I'm always asking the kid, here's the concerns you gave us. Which concern is most important, or what's getting in your way the most? Now, that's the kid's decision, and I'm likely to go with what the kid says. What do I hope he says? And what I hope doesn't matter. What do I hope he says? I hope he says the kids giving each other a hard time in reading group. And why do I hope that? Because he's able to sit on the floor during writing group, despite the noise, despite the dirt, despite Mrs. Plumpton's loud voice, despite getting in trouble for things he didn't do, despite Elijah whispering in his ear. If I'm being a detective here, it's kids giving each other a hard time in reading group that is the great, that's where the divide is occurring, right? That's what I hope he says. I'm probably going to roll with whatever he says. You'll see more examples of what I just said, depending on what videos I'll show you later in the day. You know the empathy step is done when you summarize and ask for more and there is no more. That's it. That's how you know the empathy step is done. And you keep summarizing and asking for more until there is no more. Because the first thing you hear may actually not be the thing that's getting in the kid's way the most. Just because you heard it first doesn't mean it's most important. Right. So now let me just put you on, you want to fix everything, right? You also want to be fast. And what this model proves is that the faster you go, the longer it takes. I have this discussion with my Universal Design for Learning colleagues frequently. We actually have a project going on in which we're trying to combine CPS with UDL. What I've learned about UDL is that generally speaking, it's not collaborative. UDL, the adult is deciding what's getting in the kid's way. The adult is deciding what we're doing about it. No wonder you're doing that. And then the adult is deciding whether what worked for one can be universalized to all. So here, isn't this fascinating? We have no idea what's getting in this kid's way. We're going to apply a solution and then apply that solution to everybody, even though we really don't know what's getting in this kid's way yet. I just find that to be ridiculously inefficient. So that's a big reason you don't want to do that. Now we're seeing if we can combine the two. Mostly that's going to involve, I think, because the project is being run by the UDL folks, mostly that's going to involve gathering information from kids so that you can find out what's going on, then deciding whether you want to universalize, right? But here's what's interesting about universalizing. I can see that on some things, but just because Bobby's having difficulty completing X, Y, Z for this reason, doesn't mean that's why this other kid is. So I'm still not sure that universalizing is going to be the most efficient way for you to go, right? To tell you the truth, I'd rather take it one problem at a time. I think that's more efficient. Interesting, eh? There is a video that I might show you next where you'll see that I reach for the notepad when I feel like we have gone beyond what I'm going to be able to remember. That's when I pull it out. I don't tend to start with it. Some people do. I don't, because I think it looks kind of stiff. I think you start with a notepad. It looks like an interrogation, right? I don't want this to look like an interrogation. So it's mostly my memory that determines when the notepad comes out, right? I want you to notice something else. This is happening in where are we in this video? We are in the principal's office. Where's the principal? In Mrs. Plumpton's classroom, providing coverage. This principal has this model in his blood. He was the reason this model was in this school, his subsequent 3 elementary schools, and he is now the superintendent of a school system in New Hampshire, and they are implementing this model. In that school system, just to show you that it's the year 2024 and we are living in very political, polarized times, they are allowed to say collaborative and proactive solutions in that school system, probably because no one knows what it is. They are not allowed to say social emotional learning in that school system. It is against policy driven by the parents to say the words social emotional learning. Just to show you where we're at here in 2024. Go ahead. Where did you think you saw that happening? You don't want to do that until I change that in about 5 minutes. You don't want to lead the witness. I don't remember any time in that she did that, but I will watch it more carefully next time. You don't want to lead the witness. That's exactly right. Now, that's different than open-ended does not mean you're not leading the witness. So I'm not sure open-ended and not leading the witness are in the same, you know what I'm saying? There are kids who are going to have a very hard time answering open-ended questions, but can answer very concrete, literal black and white questions under both circumstances. So for example, a memorable kid. I was asking somewhat abstract questions. What's making it hard for you to get along with your brother? Nothing. Too broad, right? And I had suspected that we had some speech and language stuff going on here that had never been identified. So I also had the parents in the room because I was trying to show them what I thought was going on. I then said to him, "What's your brother's name?" "Greg." "What color's the sky?" "Blue." "Grass?" "Green." "What do cows say?" "Moo." "What's making it hard for you to get along with your brother?" "Nothing." What did I conclude? And I didn't think difficulty getting along with your brother was loaded. One was very abstract and required, the others were very black and white. That is something I sometimes do with kids to see, can they answer something black and white? And if they can, I might try to probe in a much more black and white way while still trying not to lead the witness. But I'm going to change that slightly when we cover the slide on kids who don't talk or are saying, "I don't know a lot." Them, you might not have any choice but to give them options and let them choose. So there's a little leading, but they still get to decide whether you are correct or not. But we're not quite there yet. Good? Others. How do I approach teachers who, in your words, are not ready to hear that? You know, then it depends on what's going on in that room with that person and what kind of relationship I can build with them so that they are knowing that I'm not the enemy, I'm not being critical. There's some relationship building that might need to occur there, know where they're coming from. Teachers do well if they can too. Is there a reason this person is a little closed off to feedback, closed off to suggestions? So I don't have an algorithm for you except I got to get to know this person better because something's going on, right? And it's exactly my approach with a kid who's not talking or a kid who's not. It's the same approach, right? I don't do this. I don't treat my mentality about adults is no different than my mentality about kids. If I have somebody who I think is not thinking the way I'd like them to, or somebody who's just not coming along, my number one goal is to get curious. Same with a kid, right? Help me understand this better. So reflective listening, right? So you're sure that the kid can sit in his seat for the entire school day. Help me understand that better. And just by reflective listening, you might get, well, I didn't say the whole day, but I do want him in his seat during social studies. How come social studies? Well, just because of what I'm doing in the classroom, and it would be better if he was stationary, right? Good, we're getting somewhere. I'm getting in, right? My entry point was, help me understand this better. No different with adults than it is with kids. Good? Without knowing the person, I have no clue how I would play it. I just know I got to find out where this person's coming from, and if they're not comfortable, I'm not going to find that out either. That's it. Human beings, kids included. Okay, so the principal is in Mrs. Plumpton's classroom. He's providing coverage. If we are wondering, how are we going to make sure Mrs. Plumpton has time to solve problems with her students, we have just answered part of the question with the help of others, including her administrator. Good. Did you still have your question? Okay. Let's keep going. And I think I have fixed my computer freezing problem. Yeah. Now it'll freeze again, but so just to prove that I'm wrong. But let's go back and cover a few other things and then watch another video. And then I'm going to have to decide what video we're going to watch, because I've got a very long one that I love, but we'll see. Where are we? Here's some additional pointers that I usually talk about after the Mrs. Plumpton video. You're not thinking about solutions in the empathy step. The empathy step is a solution-free zone. Truth is, you can't technically, you can't think about solutions in the empathy step, because you're thinking about solutions before you've done the define adult concern step, and the solution is supposed to address the concerns of both parties, both of which you haven't heard yet. So why would we think about solutions in the empathy step? But the other reason you wouldn't want to be thinking about solutions in the empathy step is because it would be very distracting. It would keep you from thinking about what you should be thinking about in the empathy step, which should be, do I understand what the kid just said? If the answer's no, you're going to use drilling strategies 1 through 6. 1 through 6 are you didn't understand what the kid just said. 7 and 8 are you did and you want to see if there's more. Good? That's actually a new algorithm. I think it just came out of one of our supervision groups that we're doing. Yep. 1 through 6, you don't understand what the kid said. Of course, the discrepant observation, which is 6, is you don't even agree with what the kid said. But you got to be careful with not agreeing with what the kid said. The kid is entitled to their reality. You're entitled to yours, right? So you and the kid don't see it exactly the same way. Be careful. A lot of people jumped to the conclusion he's lying. No, he's entitled to his perspective. You're entitled to yours. The fact I've seen him do what I'm talking about. I get it. He's still entitled to his perspective. 7 and 8 are, I do understand what the kid said, pretty sure. Now I'm going to table or summarize and see if there's anything else. Okay, you want to bullet number 2. You want to remember that drilling is not the same as grilling. Grilling is an act of intimidation. Drilling is an act of curiosity. Drilling involves listening, not lessening with an O, as in teaching the kid a lesson, or lessening with an E, as in dismissing the kid's concerns. And yes, I promise you I was using this word before Donald. I had a mother ask me during a talk one night, don't my concerns trump my kids' concerns? I said, the minute your concerns trump your kids' concerns, you're not doing Plan B anymore. In this model, the concerns of both parties are of exactly equal legitimacy. There's no trumping. That's not a political statement. That's just the word that I was using well before Donald came into my consciousness, at which point I can now not get him out. As you saw Mrs. Plumpton doing a wonderful job of, you want to stay neutral and non-defensive throughout the empathy step. You are suspending your emotional response because the empathy step is not about you. And repeating myself here, If you respond emotionally to something the kid says, you are basically letting the kid know, I can't handle hearing that. Now the kid's got to decide whether they can speak freely and base that on whether they think you can handle what they're about to say. I don't think so. Good for Mrs. Plumpton. And finally, the last point I'm going to cover on here, no reason to rush through the empathy step. The empathy step is not a mechanical formality. The main ingredient, curiosity. You really want to know. Not only are you the first person to identify all those unsolved problems, it is highly likely that you will be the first person to figure out what's been making it hard for this kid to meet this expectation for a very long time, but not if you're rushing, not if you're not curious. The buck is once again stopping with you. You're going to find out, but not if you're rushing. We good? Let's cover some more things. Then we'll decide what video we're watching. I don't think we're watching the long. Oops. And if you do, you're looking for more, 7 or 8. Good? Let's spend some time on this one, and then we'll watch another video, because I don't like to make people listen to me too long right up leading to lunch. Let's talk about another thing that can happen after you say what's up, shall we? And we'll just go in order here. What if the kid says, I don't know, or goes silent on you? Here are your top 2 strategies. Number 1, don't freak out. I don't know and silence are going to be part of almost every empathy step you do. It's the norm. It's typical. Definitely not worth freaking out about. And keep drilling. But if the kid doesn't start talking right from the get-go, or stops talking, now we got to figure out what's going on. And what's going on could have something to do with us, and what's going on could have something to do with the kid. Let's think about us for a few minutes, shall we? Because this, as you are now hearing, is very much a are you willing to look in the mirror model. Here's a few possibilities for things us adults might be doing that might be making it hard for kids to talk to us. And by the way, that's a question we should always be willing to ask ourselves. Is there something I'm doing that's making it hard for the kid to talk to me? Here is a sampling of possibilities. Possibility number 1, you didn't do plan B, you did plan A. Plan A is a conversation stopper. Possibility number 2, you didn't do proactive plan B, you did emergency plan B. So you've added heat and rush to the mix. Both conversation stoppers. Whenever somebody says to me, the kid wouldn't talk, my first question is always, question is, tell me the story. And the story almost always begins with the words, well, when he, I'll say, stop. Did you just say, well, when he? They'll say, yeah, when he. I'll say, did you do plan B in the heat of the moment? They'll say, yeah, when he. I'll say, I can help you out. You got to go back and do it proactively. They go back and do it proactively. The kid almost always talks. Possibly number 3. You didn't word your unsolved problem according to the guidelines. You threw concerning behavior at the kid. You threw a theory at the kid. You clumped it. It wasn't specific enough. Those have nothing to do with the kid. Now let's talk about the kid. And I'm not being exhaustive on adults. I'm just giving you a sampling. What about the kid? Maybe the kid doesn't trust you yet. Maybe the kid doesn't trust the process yet. Maybe the kid's had a lot of plan A in their life and they're still betting on the plan A horse. Could take a while before the kid stops betting on the plan A horse. Possibility number 2, the kid said they don't know because they don't know. Many kids have become so accustomed to having their concerns be dismissed or disregarded, they haven't thought about their concerns for a very long time. Why talk? Possibility number 3, maybe the kid has lost faith and they just plain don't see the point in talking anymore. How do you know a kid has lost faith? They tell you. How do they tell you? By saying things like, "This will never get better. You can't help me. There's no point in talking about this." Those are "I've lost faith" statements. Now I've got a strategy for you. Whenever I hear "I've lost faith" statements, I ask the question, was it always so? See, I know it wasn't always so because the kid wasn't born having lost faith. Something must have happened along the way. Maybe the kid will talk about that. Kid I was working with a long time ago was in his 7th residential facility, 10th grader. We have a revolving door in this country. Kids bounce from one residential facility to another. He was in his 7th. The unsolved problem, difficulty reading out loud in social studies. The frustration response, walking out of the classroom when he was asked to read out loud in social studies, something he was being punished for a lot. They asked me to do Plan B with the kid, started the empathy step, started getting a lot of "I've lost faith" statements. I used my strategy. Was it always so? He said, "No, it's not always so." I said, "Tell me a time that it wasn't so." He said, "First grade, Mrs. Edwards." "Tell me about first grade, Mrs. Edwards." "She was really nice. She gave me the help I needed." "When did things start going badly for you?" "Mrs. Abernathy, 2nd grade." "Tell me about Mrs. Abernathy, 2nd grade." "Not nice, not helpful." "Tell me, how's the reading out loud going for you in social studies these days?" You know what's coming. He leaned forward in his chair and whispered, "I don't know how to read." I said, reflective listening, "You don't know how to read. And you've been struggling with that for the last 9 or 10 years. I'm very sorry about that." Now, at some point, I'm going to ask the kid the following question. It might not be right then because I don't want the kid to say no reflexively, but at some point, maybe even the next day, I'm going to ask, "Tell me, if we could do something about the reading now, would you be interested?" If the kid's not interested today, I hope the kid's interested tomorrow, because it's kind of tragic that that kid's been lugging that bowling ball around for the last 9 or 10 years. And by the way, paying the price for it too. All right, another possibility, maybe the kid needs time to think. That's why they're not talking. If the kid needs time to think, we adults better be quiet. You know us adults, at the slightest hint of silence, we tend to fill the void with the sound of our own voices. If you ask me the number one piece of feedback I give to people who are new at this model, here it is. Shh. Let him think. Let's say you get through all of that and you still have a kid who's not talking. Finally, your theories might come in handy. Finally, it's okay for you to do some educated guessing or some hypothesis testing that the kid has to verify. So you are slightly leading the witness, but you are not rolling with it unless the kid says that it's true. Good? Now, I forgot to tell you something at the top there. A strategy that I frequently use if I have a kid who's not talking is to ask the following question. This part top, the child factors. Do you know what you want to say, but you're not sure how to say it? Or do you not know what you want to say? Good question. Sort of gets me in the ballpark. Doesn't get me all the way there, but a good sort of, let me see what I've got here question. All right. So we are now guessing. Guessing is okay as a last resort. With kids who can talk, we are almost done talking about strategies for kids who can talk but aren't. But the lines are about to begin to blur between those kids who can talk and aren't, and kids who aren't talking because they can't. So now let's blur a little, because some of the strategies that I'm about to talk about work for both. Here we go. Go ahead. I don't think you heard me say I use use plan A as an adult factor. Plan A is where you're telling the kid what the solution is. Well, you're not, that's the thing. That if you're using plan A, you're not doing the empathy step. Correct. These are adult factors that keep kids from talking. One very good way to get a kid to not talk to you is to tell them what the solution is. That's plan A. Make sense? So none of this, so adult factors, using plan A is not in the context of doing the empathy step. There is no empathy step with plan A. Good? Good. Glad we cleared that up. Let's talk a little bit about kids who aren't talking because they can't. But we're still blurred a little bit because some of these initial strategies are also effective with kids who can talk but aren't. Let's say I'm doing some hypothesis testing, some educated guessing, and the kid won't even respond verbally, even though I know they can. And by the way, excellent strategy here for selective mutism. I teach the kid 5 fingers. This is not ingenious, but boy, do I get a lot of information this way. There's a graphic for this on the Lives and Balance website. I'll show you where when we take our tour. 5 means very true. 4 means sort of true. Unbelievable. Highly unlikely. Although my kids, when they were young, they could do the talk. They saw it enough, right? You're going to teach the kid 5 fingers. 5 means very true, 4 means pretty true, 3 means sort of true, 2 means not very true, 1 means not true at all. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do your educated guessing, but instead of responding verbally, which is what I'm trying to get out of the mix, all the kid's got to do is hold up fingers. I just get mammoth amounts of information this way. If 5 fingers is too many for the kid, I'll go with 3. If 3 is too many, I'll go with the usual 2. Like I said, not rocket science. If fingers are not the kid's gig, and now we're moving on to strategy number 2, I will write yes on one sticky. I'm not being exhaustive here either, by the way, just giving you a sampling, because your creativity is going to come in very handy here. I'm going to write yes on one sticky pad and no on another. And now the kid still isn't talking, but they're also not holding up fingers. All they got to do when I guess is point. Was working with a kid up in Vancouver. There's a big school system in Vancouver that has implemented this model, and they wanted video of some of their students implementing the model. So I was at this school, and we were going to shoot video of this kid, like a 4th grader, came in with his aide into the school counselor's office, and we were going to do Plan B. He's never met me before. He's not into it. He's not into it, right? So for the first 20 minutes, he's just wandering around the school counselor's office, telling her what lousy toys she has. Now, what am I thinking as this is going on? I'm thinking, how do I meet this kid where they're at? But since I'm not a mind reader, and I've never met the kid before, that makes it a little harder to meet the kid where they're at. So after about 20 minutes, I said, would it help? Because I'm trying to ask for information. And I'm getting nothing except how lousy the school counselor's toys are. So I said, would it help if we wrote yes on one sticky pad and no on another, and then I could guess and you could let me know if what I'm saying is true? Before he even had a chance to respond, the school counselor had the sticky pads out in front of him, yes on one, no on the other. He immediately came over, crumpled them up, and threw them in the garbage. I'm thinking, isn't this great? The people who are watching this video are going to be sitting there thinking, see, I knew this was garbage. After 10 more minutes, he asked, can you put the sticky pads back out there again? I think that would be good. And for the next 15 to 20 minutes, this is them telling me this, they learned more about this kid in 15 or 20 minutes than they knew about this kid in 3 years. Just through yes and no. Excellent strategy, not only for kids who can talk and aren't, but for kids who aren't talking because they can't. For kids who aren't talking because they can't, Yes and no are the single two most important words in the English language. I have seen parents cry with yes and no that had never been done before as they started learning about their kid just through yes and no. Very touching. Of course, I was always wondering, why didn't somebody else do this before me? Yes and no? This is not complicated. When I need pictures, you know, speech and language pathologists have gobs of pictures, right? I don't have gobs of pictures. I'm not a speech and language pathologist. I guess I could buy gobs of pictures if I knew where, but I've got Google Images, which is free. Not that I wouldn't buy pictures, but Google Images, wonderful, right? If I need a picture of something, just type in a word, and I get thousands. Good, so if I need a picture of a word, I'm going to Google Images to find it. I'm probably finding things that I didn't want, but I'm going to Google Images for things that I did want too. Now we're moving into more of the non-speaking realm. But by the way, let me just stick with the speakers for a few seconds. I have texted with kids in my office who were sitting 3 feet away from me for a full 50 minutes. Not a word was uttered, and obtained mammoth amounts of information and solved lots of problems that way. I have a kid who I still intermittently work with who's embarrassed for his face to be seen by me. We meet by Zoom with the camera off. I'm telling you, this is limited only by our creativity. I have sent surveys to kids, with kids, with a question on the top. The reason I'm having difficulty is because, and it's multiple choice, I put my theories in multiple choice format. All they got to do is circle. Is it okay to ask the kid what would be the most comfortable way for them to communicate? Yes, I do it all the time. And if a kid isn't participating, sometimes we have to move away from the unsolved problem we wanted to talk with the kid about and create a new unsolved problem. Difficulty talking with Ross about unsolved problems. Seriously, because that has to come first. I got to figure out how to communicate with the kid before I can start solving problems with them, which means the first problem I need to solve is about how we're going to communicate. Cool? Now we're moving. Go ahead. Oh, yeah, I'm not telling you stuff that doesn't work, but I appreciate the testimonial. But everything I'm talking about works. Everything I'm talking about is stuff I've done. I'm 2,000 kids in at this point. Apps. There are incredible apps out there that have pictures galore. And of course, assistive technology. What are we using these for? We're not getting super carried away here. I've got my priorities, right? What is my priority? That a kid be able to say or recognize a pig? Or that I have some mechanism for a kid to be able to tell me what's making it hard for them to meet a particular expectation? Door number 2. Do I need them to know what a goat is? Someday. Of course, if you don't live on a farm, I'm not sure that it matters that much. Low priority. If you do live on a farm, you probably ought to know what a pig is, right? My second priority is, can the kid participate in the process of generating solutions? That's what I'm going to use assistive technology for. That's my top priorities if I'm trying to solve problems with kids. All right. My speech and language pathology colleagues, who I consult with and work with frequently, believe, as do I, that the strategies you've just heard about for kids who can talk but aren't, or aren't talking because they can't, you're at about the 98% mark now, even with kids who aren't talking because they can't. But there is that other 2%. What do we do with them? Number one, I'm often consulting with a speech and language pathologist on them, but I've learned a lot over the years. And here's what they're trying to do early on. Number one, we're asking the question, how is the kid communicating? And these, generally speaking, are the high support needs kids. Raise your hand if that's a population you work with. Good. High support needs kids, one thing we can say about them is that they are communicating. Every kid communicates. They may not be communicating through our preferred modality, but they are communicating. Sometimes that communicating is through grunting. We're good. If I got something, and I always got something, maybe I can tap into that something to help the kid communicate about early things that I want kids to be able to communicate about. And by the way, as it says at the bottom of the screen, my reference point here is infants. Infants have no words, right? But do infants have unsolved problems? Yes. Do infants communicate that they have unsolved problems? Yes. In the ways that infants do, right? What do we do with infants? We try to figure out what's going on. Roughly, that would be called the empathy step. But because infants can't talk, you're not asking the questions, you're guessing. I hope you're a good guesser. And what any good speech and language pathologist will tell you is good guessing depends on whether you've got good eyes. Any speech and language pathologist will tell you their most important assessment tool is their eyes, their powers of observation. It's what keeps us who've had infants from sticking a bottle in the kid's mouth no matter what's going on. Sticking a bottle in the kid's mouth will only address one unsolved problem. They're hungry. But if it's something else, it won't. And in fact, I would say that's a very bad precedent. Can the kid grunt to communicate about preferences or discomfort or pain or a need through sensory input? I'm always thinking to myself, what would I do right now if this was an infant? I would guess. What do we do with infants? We try to guess right, we then apply a solution. And we are then 100% dependent on the infant to let us know if we got it right. If we didn't get it right, the infant will be delighted to let you know that. What's that process called? Collaboration. Do we collaborate with infants? We do. Can we collaborate with kids who are very high support needs and aren't talking because they can't? Yes, but we have to start at a very basic level, and then it just totally depends on the kid, where we're starting and what we're going to get and how long it's going to take. But if I got grunting, I can usually get information about the things that I have up on the screen. Preferences, something's wrong, pain, the need for sensory input. Quick true story, this is fairly recent. I work with a school in Connecticut that caters only to kids who are non-speaking. So they've got the whole gamut, the whole range. And by the way, non-speaking, super heterogeneous population, right? Just very hard for me to say anything that's true of all of them, but that's true of everybody too. But just because the kid is non-speaking doesn't mean we can make global statements about them. Got to still get to know the kid, got to still meet the kid where they're at. This kid was slightly less high support needs, and we thought it would be kind of cool as a prelude to helping this kid communicate about what's making it hard for her to meet a particular expectation. To start with, food preferences. How are those connected? Well, we thought they might be connected. We thought that if she could communicate about food preferences, that would help us help her start to communicate about what's making it hard for her to meet a particular expectation. Speech and language pathologist pulled out her food pictures, of which she had hundreds. We would put two pictures in front of the kid. The kid would let us know which one she liked better. The ones she liked better would go over here. The ones she didn't like as much would go over here. Good. We're already building. We're already moving in a direction. That she could do that, fantastic. Next step, this took a few months, by the way. I'm not talking like the next day. Next step, can she communicate with us about what she doesn't like about the food she doesn't like? So we developed some options for her: taste, smell, texture. She was able to do that after a period of time. So now we knew what, oh, this is how it's related, what she didn't like about certain foods. The next leap was what was making it hard for her to meet a particular expectation, because what's hard about meeting a particular expectation is related to what's hard about eating a particular food: taste, smell, texture. And by the way, in the same way that you can do taste, smell, texture for food, you can come up with an algorithm of what might be making it hard for somebody to meet a particular expectation. Starting with, it's too hard. Continuing with, it's boring. Continuing with, I don't understand. There aren't that many things that could be making it hard for somebody to meet a particular expectation. We can come up with an algorithm. Believe it or not, we could come up with an algorithm of solutions too. Ready? This is going to be disappointing, because we humans like to think of ourselves as very creative problem solvers. Most of our solutions fall into just 3 buckets. Ask for help. Do it a different way. I'm forgetting the third. Ask for help. I've been up since midnight. Your time. Ask for help. Do it a different way. Give a little. Can you believe it? This is your marriage we're talking about here. Ask for help. Do it a different way. Give a little. There's the solutions of life. We can make those concrete as well. We can put those into pictures. Am I making sense? This is all about our creativity. Let's finish the morning with a video. This one is on the Lives in the Balance website. I'm going to try for the rest of the day to show you as many kids as possible. This is the oldest kid you're going to see today. I'm only going to show you 15 minutes of it. Some of you may have seen this because it's on the website. That's me with my tongue out. This is Ryland. Ryland is a previously explosive kid, now a much more reticent, anxious kid, 16 years old. I love this one. Every video I show I love. This was filmed at a I get a lot of my film either because of schools that I'm working with or trainings that I do. Sometimes I'll do a 3-day training and I'll work with a kid live. But usually that requires technology that would not have been appropriate for this. We had enough trouble with technology as it is. So I've got about 200 people in another room attending this conference that was in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Ryland and me and his mom are in this adjacent room doing Plan B, and everybody in the other room is watching it on a screen. Ryland, I had met with the mom the day before to model the ALSIP, then the ALSIP, now the ASIP for the entire group. Came up with maybe 20 unsolved problems for Ryland. I think he picked the one we were going to talk about. I don't remember who picked it. You'll hear what the unsolved problem is. It's very well worded, contrary to some of the other ones you've seen today. Why do I like this video? You're going to see my demeanor change a little bit because Ryland is very slow-paced. Ryland has a long history of learning difficulties, and you are going to be hearing about some of them. So this will be our last 15 minutes before we go to lunch. Ryland, Mum, and me modeling it for the entire group. Here we go. And apparently I have just used humor because they're laughing. I don't remember what about.
And you are led
What's that?
You'd probably be good at that.
I just did it.
You're live right now.
Good. If you close the door, that'd be great.
When I'm in Canada, I have a slight Canadian accent. I don't know what happens, but in Canada, I say great.
You ready?
I guess so.
No pressure.
One quick reminder, Ryland didn't know this, I don't think, but I did. 5 of the teachers from his school were in the audience. 5 of his teachers. This is the way this goes. After they watched, you can watch the whole thing on the Lives in Balance website. I'm only showing you about 12 minutes of it. They went back to their school and they said, we got to do this. That's the way it works.
This is mostly for the learning of the other people, so you're not like on the hot seat or anything. All we're trying to do is demonstrate what it looks like to solve a problem in a way that not only works for your mom, but also works for you. Okay? Your job, I'm going to have you announce the unsolved problem, Mom, because I'm not exactly sure the wording, starting with the word difficulty. Ryland, your job will be to tell us what's hard for you about the expectation that we're going to be talking about. And that's the first step. Second step will be Mom telling us why she thinks it's important for you to meet that expectation. And then the third step will be us trying to come up with a solution that works for both you and Mom. Okay? Now what you're going to hear me doing for the sake of the people who are learning about this is a lot of the time I'm going to be announcing what I'm doing, saying what I'm doing, okay? Just so they know what they're seeing, all right? But besides that, let's just relax. Cool. Mom, let's start.
Okay, I have the hard part, I have to try and word it.
I've noticed
Okay.
that.
You can do it.
She can do it.
Okay, Ryland has difficulty completing his drama homework on time,
Okay, and the drama homework is what?
learning lines
And he's supposed to learn the lines how?
by memorizing
Got it.
lines.
And by what process is Ryland supposed to memorize his lines?
Bringing them home.
Yeah. And doing this alone, or doing this with you?
Doing
Like
it
you're
with-
looking at the lines and
Yes, doing
saying
it with
them?
me, doing it with me,
Doing it with you?
yes.
So difficulty practicing the lines for drama,
Yeah.
for homework with Mom?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Now comes the big question. Tell us about that. What's hard about that?
Not just I practice on my own too sometimes. But like, it's kind of hard. I don't really know how to describe it, but I feel like I don't have the right mindset, like, of mainstream kids. I feel like my mind can not, like, remember things as good as theirs. Like, these kids are, like, done their work, like in with 1 week. I'm like, I can't remember things quickly.
That well, quickly.
Yeah.
Got it. So, for the group, this is reflective listening. One reason that you're having difficulty practicing the lines with Mom is because you feel like other kids remember them faster than you do.
Yeah.
Yes? Let me ask you just if I want to find out if I say that slightly differently, if it's still true. Do you feel like it takes you too long? Or is it only that you think the other kids are doing it faster than you?
Well, kind of both of things you said. They do it long. It takes me longer than them.
Yeah.
But them, I don't.
And they're faster than you.
Yeah, I just feel like they might be a little bit smarter than.
Smarter than you.
Yeah.
Okay. And what gives you the impression that they're smarter than you is?
Well, that looks like some of the kids in my class are older, but I don't. Some in my grade seem to get to things quicker than I do.
Okay. So, are faster and smarter the same thing? They're not.
Yeah.
So one thing we know for sure, well, we don't know this for sure, we know that you feel that they are faster than you in doing some things. When you say smarter, is that what you're referring to, or are you referring to something else that makes you think that they're smarter than you?
Well, like, a lot of the people can write bigger, like, paragraphs than me. I am a very creative person, but I can't really think of things that quickly to put on things. It's like, in class we do reflections, all the kids, like, have big sentences, like, written down without them having to stop. But I have to stop every once in a while, because I can't, sometimes I forget what I'm supposed to be writing.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. That's still kind of faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if faster and smarter are not the same thing, so far the examples you're giving are mostly faster examples. Unless you feel that faster and smarter means the same thing. What do you think?
They might not mean the same thing, but, like, smart people that can do stuff fast is like a combination that probably seems like a good combination.
Got it. And you are slower, and at least you feel not as smart.
Yeah.
Yes? So that's one thing that's getting in the way of you memorizing your lines. Yes? Mm-hmm. Are there any other things that are getting in the way of you practicing your lines with mom for homework?
With my teachers, like, I do try to do my homework and my lines and all that, but they kind of stress me out a little bit. Like, my main teacher is pretty supportive and helps me, but there's always once in a while, like, where, like, I try to do something on my own speed, but they're always saying hurry up, and I kind of need more time to, like, go over things. I can't just, like, hurry up right there.
This is very good to know. So, on the, I get that in general, that you don't like being hurried up. Is there a deadline on memorizing the lines for drama?
Yeah, there is a bit. I don't always really get things done on the deadlines.
Right. And so let's think about the drama teacher a little bit too. She's a she.
Yeah.
She wants you to have your lines memorized by a certain day, cause?
You gotta perform on the other days.
Got it. And if you don't know your lines?
I don't know. And you have to, like just try and memorize them.
Okay. So she has a deadline for learning your lines. And what I think you just told me is that having a deadline doesn't always work for you, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't always meet the deadline, because sometimes it takes you a little bit longer to memorize your lines than people are expecting you to do. Fair? Okay. Do you and your mom agree on how you should memorize the lines? Like, should you do it on your own? Should you do it practicing with her? Do you think you guys agree on what that should look like when you're memorizing your lines?
I guess so. Like, I don't have any problem with practicing them with my mom.
Okay. So the practicing them with your mom part is not a part that makes it hard to do it. How about mom? I don't know if I want to. I'm not going to guess yet. What else is making it hard? So far we've got deadlines don't help you as it relates to the memorizing of your lines or a lot of other things, right? And it feels to you like the other kids are faster than you in memorizing their lines. Yes?
Yeah.
And maybe that means they're smarter too, although we're not so sure about that part. Yes?
Yeah.
Any other things, by the way, for the group, that was a summary. Any other things making it difficult for you to memorize the lines for drama, for homework?
Anything else? Like, if I find something that's like a big, long thing, like if I'm looking for short things to read, but there's not that many short things and they're all just like big short ones, I do get a little stressed out because I panic and I don't know how to like remember them like at a time.
So I think what you're saying is that some of the things you're supposed to memorize are quite long,
Yeah.
and that stresses you out because you're not exactly sure how to approach it.
Yeah.
The longer it is, the more stressed out you get.
Yeah, pretty much.
Got it. So now we got three things, right? The long ones get you stressed out because you're not sure how to approach them. Deadlines do not help, and you feel like the other kids are going to be able to do it faster than you. Yes?
Yeah.
We're learning a lot here. Mom, did you know all this stuff?
Not all of it. I knew some of it.
Good.
Yeah.
What we're always looking for in this step is new info, right? Any new info is gold. Because if we don't know what's making it hard for Ryland to memorize the lines for drama, for homework, then we won't be able to solve it, right? You're doing great, by the way. So those are our three so far. But I always like to know everything. Anything else making it hard for you to memorize the lines for drama, for homework?
Not much more than I already said. I don't.
Have we pretty much covered it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, for the group, Ryland has just told us, you just told us that there's nothing else. Okay. And technically, that's where the first step ends. But there's one condition under which that might not be when the first step ends. And that is, I've got some ideas bouncing around in my head for other things that might be making it hard for you to memorize your lines. Can I take a few guesses here?
So what's happening here is I've just changed the rules. The general rule is that the empathy step is done when you summarize and ask for more and there's no more. But if there's some things you want to check in with the kid about, that's okay. At the end, after you summarize and ask for more, and there is no more, if you're thinking, I'd like to check in with the kid about a few things, you can do it.
Completely wrong on all of these, so don't agree with me just because I'm guessing them. I could be wrong, so let me know.
And that's me hedging against leading the witness.
Does Mom bug you to memorize your lines?
No, she Mom's fine.
Mom's fine. Does she remind you to memorize your lines?
Yeah.
Does Mom remind you? It's very hard for moms not to remind their sons to do stuff. Have you noticed?
Yes.
Yeah. Does Mom reminding you that you've got to memorize your lines make it easier or harder for you to memorize your lines?
Well, she's really good when it comes to helping me go over things. Like, my mom's like way different from my teachers. She actually has the nice tone. Like, that's what I like. My mom's not like, hurry up, read this. She like lets me read I read the speed, and like sometimes I stutter and I can't say words properly. She waits. That's what I like about having a mom that can listen. Like when you got somebody in your family that listens, that's a good thing.
That is a good thing. Good to know, huh, Mom?
Yeah.
You know what just happened? Mom's crying. But that was a very nice thing for you to say about Mom. Those are happy tears. Good.
And we're going to end on that note. Why not end the morning on a human moment, correct? But we also got a boatload of information. It's really nice in life when you can kill two birds with the one stone.